Hello and welcome to our Seizure Alert Devices webinar. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is provided by the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota. EFMN is a nonprofit organization that serves the entire state of Minnesota and eastern North Dakota. We are an affiliate of the National Epilepsy Foundation. My name is Debbie Leone, and I am the Senior Coordinator for Information Services at EFMN. Our program assistant, Mary Mavison, is also here today to help us make sure that things just go smoothly. Before we get into the meat of this today, I do want to just quickly go through, for those of you who may not have attended a GoToMeeting webinar before, you will see on the right side of your screen that you have a control panel. The orange arrow at the top can be used to hide and unhide your control panel so that you're able to see what's on the screen. There are a number of gray bars below that. They may not be in the same order as what you're seeing in this sample here, but each of those has an arrow to the left of it. And if you want to open one of those bars, you just click on that arrow to open it. If you open the audio bar, you'll see your audio choices. The best audio to use if you're attending via computer is the computer audio. If you have questions during the webinar today, you can go to the questions bar and click on that arrow, and a box will appear where you can type and submit your questions. I will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar. You can be typing them in as you think of them throughout the webinar, but I am going to wait until the end to answer them because it's possible that your question will get answered as we go along. If we're unable to get to all the questions, then I will follow up individually with you later via email. The handouts bar on the control panel is where you can click to find a copy of this PowerPoint, as well as some other useful resources that I will be referring to throughout the webinar today. Since there are multiple people attending this webinar, all attendees are muted. We will not be able to hear you, so if you wish to communicate with us, you will need to use that question area. A few housekeeping items. This will be a 1 hour long webinar. We do ask that you please close out of any other windows or applications that you might have open on your computer. This will help to ensure a better quality of experience for you. As I stated before, questions typed into the question area will be answered at the end of the webinar. And we are recording this webinar and we may post it online. The PowerPoint is attached, as I mentioned, but if you would like a recording of the webinar, you can contact me directly. I'm sorry, I appear to be having a problem. No one can see my screen. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see it now. I apologize about that. I thought I had that shared. This is why I have Mary here today, to tell me when I'm making mistakes. Thank you, Mary. So maybe I should go back a little bit just to show you those boxes I was talking about. So the control panel that I was talking about on the right-hand side is there, and those are the gray bars that you can open. This is where you can find the questions. This is where you can find the handouts. If you do find that you're having technical issues that are not being caused by me, please contact the number on the screen here for assistance. EFMN does not have the capabilities to assist with your technical issues today. All right, so let's start by talking about what we're going to be discussing today and our objectives. We'll start out by describing the benefits and the limitations of the various seizure alert devices that are available for individuals with epilepsy and their families. We will discuss the seizure detection devices that are currently available in the US. There are some that are only available in other countries. Those obviously are not going to be very helpful to anybody who's on here today. I'm assuming you're all from within the US. So we'll be talking about what is available here in the United States. It will include mattress monitors, cameras, wearables, and apps. We'll talk about how they work and the cost of each of them. We will also review some of the factors to think about when selecting a device. There are a lot of things to keep in mind, and I'll be going through that toward the end of the webinar. I will also provide you then with a brief overview of assistance, seizure assist dogs, and how they can help people who are living with epilepsy. Even though this is primarily about technology, there are things dogs can do that maybe some of the devices can't. So I want to spend a little time talking about that. Okay, let's take just a minute. I would like to kind of get an idea of who is with us today. So if you could, Mary, there's a poll that you would launch that for me. We would kind of like to know, what it is that brought you here today. So what is your relationship to epilepsy? What you can do on this, you should see the poll on your screen, and if you select one of those boxes, and then if you scroll down a bit, you will see a button to submit your answer. So do you have epilepsy? Does your child have epilepsy? Is it your spouse or your partner who has epilepsy? Your parent, or perhaps another family member? I realize that not every possible relationship to epilepsy is listed on this poll. That is because GoToWebinar only allows us 5 choices. So if you could pick the one that's closest to where you think you are. I think most of you have voted. I'll give it just a few more seconds for those last few to vote. It looks like about 90% have voted. So Mary, do you want to go ahead and close that poll and put up the results for us? So it looks like most of you are here today because your child have epilepsy. Some of you have epilepsy yourself, and others are uh, working with family members with epilepsy. So that's really helpful, because that will help me to, as I go through, to kind of target some of my content to what your specific circumstances are dealing with. So thank you for participating in that. And Mary, thank you for your help with that. You can close that out. All right, so let's start out by talking about what is a seizure alert device. Basically, a seizure alert device is technology that detects repeated shaking movements during a seizure and sends an alert to others by alarm, text, or phone call. There are obviously many types of seizures, and not all of them have repeated shaking movements. So that's something that we'll be talking about in deciding whether one of these seizure alert devices works for you, because most of them, pretty much almost all of them, only will detect the repeated shaking movement that's characteristic of a tonic-clonic seizure. We'll be talking about 4 different types. There are mattress devices, there are camera devices, there's a wearable, and there are a couple of smartwatch apps. There are a lot of benefits to seizure alert devices. They can be very useful in letting others know that a seizure is happening. And that can really allow for greater independence for people. Some people living with epilepsy are really reluctant to go out alone for fear of having a seizure in public with no one there to help them. So they become very isolated sometimes. These devices can help to reduce that isolation by making the individual just feel more confident about going out, trying new things, since they know somebody will be notified if they have a seizure. That sense of independence is especially important to those of you who may have teenagers. Teenagers and young adults very often do not want to be under the constant watchful eye of their parents. And parents understandably want to make sure their children are safe. So these devices can help parents feel more comfortable about maybe loosening up the reins a little bit and giving their teen a bit more freedom, knowing that someone will know if they are having a seizure. The major reason that people turn to seizure alert devices is just to try to get some peace of mind. Again, knowing when the seizure is going to be happening, or when it is happening, and knowing that as a parent, you can be there to provide comfort and assistance during or after a seizure, or as the individual with epilepsy, knowing that if you have a seizure, someone will be notified and you won't be on your own. A really important thing around that peace of mind is the issue of sleep. We often hear from parents of children with epilepsy that they live in fear that their child is going to have a seizure when they are not around, especially during their sleep. And in fact, they often report that their own sleep is disrupted because they're worrying over their child having a seizure. They may lie awake listening for something happening, or sometimes will sleep in the same room or even in the same bed with the child, just to be sure they don't miss anything. And while that's understandable, it's really not something that's sustainable or good for anybody in the long run. Um, for adults with epilepsy, they can also find it difficult to sleep because of that worry about having a seizure. That can lead to a really vicious cycle of fear and stress, which then increases the likelihood of having a seizure. We all know that stress can be a trigger for seizures. And then when you have a seizure, then that leads to more stress worrying about whether you're going to have a seizure the next time. So sleep can really be affected by that. And you know, having one of these devices can, again, give you that bit of peace of mind that to perhaps maybe be able to let you sleep easier, knowing that there's someone who's going to be notified if something happens. Some devices will record events and allow for sharing with healthcare providers. You know, we always recommend tracking seizures so that you can accurately report them to your doctor. I saw a study not too long ago that said that individuals with epilepsy on average report less than half of their seizures to their doctors. And there's a lot of reasons that might happen, but one of them might just be that it can be difficult to even know how many you're having and when you're having them if they're happening in your sleep. So having a record from these devices can provide more accurate information. And when you can provide that accurate information to your doctor, that can help them make better treatment decisions for you and really be able to recognize what the patterns are for you. You know, many parents, especially, look to seizure devices as protection against Sudep, which is a sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. And this is a topic that can be really difficult to talk about. I bring it up today because I want you to know, first of all, that Sudep is rare, but it can happen. And so we feel that it's very important to just to be aware of. So I would like to talk for a minute about what Sudep is, who is most at risk, and what role seizure alert devices might play in preventing it, if there is any role. Um, so as I said, Sudep is the sudden, unexpected death of someone with epilepsy who was otherwise healthy. In Sudep cases, no other cause of death is found when an autopsy is done. The person dies and there is no apparent reason for it. Each year, more than 1 in 1,000 people with epilepsy die from Sudep. Now, I know numbers can be kind of hard to wrap your head around sometimes. That is pretty rare. Basically, that is 0.1%, which is 1/10 of 1% of people with epilepsy die from Sudep. So, you know, it is rare, but again, it's a reality that does happen to some people. And when it does happen, especially if it's celebrities, we hear about it in the news. And so I want to make sure people understand what it is and who's at risk. It is the leading cause of death in people with uncontrolled seizures. So who's at risk? The greatest risk factor for SUDEP is having tonic-clonic seizures, especially uncontrolled seizures. People with nighttime seizures may also be at higher risk. And when I say may, the problem with SUDEP is that it really has not had as much research done on it. And it's happening. We're certainly encouraging that, and we work with our national office, the National organization has a Sudep Institute that is dedicated to learning more about it and helping spread the word about how people can try to protect themselves from it. But nobody really knows yet exactly why it happens. Again, we know that the highest risk seems to be among people with tonic-clonic seizures, those convulsive seizures, whose seizures are not well controlled. Missing medications or not taking seizure medications as prescribed can also put people at higher risk for Sudep simply because it leads to more seizures. And people who are having more seizures are at higher risk. So if you'd like to learn more, our national organization does have some really good information on their website, and I've put a link in here for you. So let's talk about seizure alert devices and Sudep. Currently, there are no devices available that have been proven to prevent Sudep. And I want to emphasize that word proven because, again, more studies need to be done. Since Sudep occurs most often during sleep, some people may be helped by having a way to alert someone that they're having a seizure. But a significant number of people who die from Sudep in their sleep even don't necessarily show signs of having had a seizure. I believe it's about a third of them do. So again, there are no foolproof methods of preventing it, and certainly the devices have not been proven, but they may contribute to helping to prevent it simply by having someone there if you do have a seizure who can make sure you're okay and get help to you faster. But really more research is really needed into how well these seizure alert devices work and what role they might have and how helpful they might be in preventing Sudep. So let's look at some of the limitations of seizure alert devices. Because they do not detect anything except the tonic-clonic seizures, I mean, that's how they work for the most part, is detecting that shaking movement. So they're only going to work with generalized tonic-clonic seizures, what we used to call grand mal, which are convulsive, or with focal seizures that have enough movement to trigger the device. They're not going to pick up seizures without big movements. For example, absence seizures or many types of focal seizures. So when you're thinking about what kind of device might be good for you, if you strictly have focal seizures that do not, that don't cause those big movements, a device is likely not going to do you any good. Most of these devices are not FDA approved. That doesn't mean there's anything dangerous about them. It just means that they are not approved as medical devices by the FDA. These devices do not alert caregivers of breathing problems or changes in heart rate. And that's something that may be important in Sudep because some of the research that has been done points to the possibility that issues with breathing or heart rate may be involved in some cases of Sudep. And these devices, for the most part, do not detect those things. One of the big limitations of these devices, and again, there are many reasons that these are helpful for people, but one thing to be aware of is that you want to make sure that by getting a seizure alert device, it doesn't provide you with some false sense of security. Especially in regard to Sudep. The worst possible thing would be for someone to think, oh, well, now I have this device and I don't have to worry about taking my medicine on time or avoiding seizure triggers or eating well or getting enough sleep, all of the things that they should be doing to protect themselves. Devices are not a cure-all. They're just another tool in the toolbox. Managing epilepsy in other ways is still very important. The other thing I wanted to note is that what evidence is out there about how these devices work. It comes mostly from studies that have been conducted in hospital epilepsy monitoring units and sometimes in homes, but really more scientific study is needed to know how well they work in the real world. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there. There are people who use them and have seen them successfully uh, identifying and alerting to seizures. But what is lacking right now is just the hardcore scientific research into them. So let's start in talking about the different types of devices with the mattress device. There is a device called the MFit bed monitor. And for these devices, I have included web addresses so that you can go on the websites. I'm going to give you an overview of all of these devices, but if you have specific questions, really the companies themselves are the ones that are going to be able to answer those detailed questions that maybe I'm not covering here or that are specific to your situation. In general, how the MFit bed monitor works is that there's a bed sensor. It goes under the mattress. It is a high-level sensor and it detects fast repetitive movements. So again, those movements that are characteristic of generalized tonic-clonic seizures or grand mal seizures. This device does include an optional no movement alarm that sounds within 5 seconds of no movement or when someone leaves the bed. That can be important if someone is having a seizure and perhaps falls out of bed. That alarm, if you have the optional alarm on there, it can sound to let you know that the person is no longer in bed. You know, this is probably one of the only times where maybe a device could also be helpful for a focal seizure. If someone's having a focal seizure with lack of awareness and they're wandering and they get up out of bed, if that optional no movement alarm is on, that could possibly alert someone that the individual, I mean, maybe they just got up to go to the bathroom, but it's also possible that they may be having a focal seizure and be wandering. The way this bed monitor notifies people is through an alarm, and the alarm is loud. So there is an optional alarm that can be put up to 100 feet away from the main system. And the reason someone might consider doing that is if you have other people in the house and you want to be alerted if your loved one is having a seizure, but you don't want the entire household woken up, especially if you may have other young children, then that can be used. Put the alarm in a different part of the house up to 100 feet away, and then you can put a baby monitor next to it so that you listen to the baby monitor to hear the alarm. This cost for this device is $594, and it includes everything that you need in order to make it work. It includes a control unit, the sensor itself that goes on the bed, the batteries, you know, all of everything that you're going to need. There are some devices that have a one-time cost, but then have additional costs that are ongoing. This device is a one-time. You buy it, you set it up, and you're able to use it. Okay, we'll move on now to the camera device, and this is called the SAMI Sleep Monitor. And how this works is that it is a video-based nighttime movement detection system. It's a wireless video camera that you mount on the wall, so you have to have somewhere to mount it, and it has infrared illuminators that allow it to give a very good quality video image even in complete darkness. Now it does run its own SAMI application, and that includes a customizable program that searches and analyzes the video. So the video is running, it's always detecting, and then the program searches and analyzes that video information for what they call qualified seizure events, abnormal movement activity that might be a seizure. And when that is detected, it alerts with a loud alarm, and then it starts recording live audio and video. And that live audio and video is archived for later use. Because the camera is always running, you can also, I mean, it live streams, so you can basically watch it at any time. So you can use it sort of like a video baby monitor. The difference is that it has that program that will actually detect the abnormal activity and start recording when it happens and alert you when it happens in case you don't happen to be watching. This device does have a bright light, a bright white power light, and you can cover that up. But it also has a ring of red lights that can't be covered. So that's something to think about when you're thinking about whether this is a good device for you, because some people may find that comforting, kind of like a night light, but if you or your child would be bothered by it and wouldn't be able to sleep, then it's not going to be a good choice for you. And again, that's just one example of the types of things to consider when you're choosing a device. And we'll be talking more about some of other things to consider later in the webinar. When that video is, when that recording of the audio and video starts, it also timestamps it so that you know what time the event happened. In the case of this, the movement doesn't have to be really large or repetitive, but it does have to last at least 15 seconds before it will trigger that audio and video recording. So when that records, you can then make a recording to share with your doctor. So that again can be a really useful thing. It does require that you have an iPhone or an iPod Touch running that SAMI application. So this is an Apple-based system, and depending on how you feel about Apple, that may be a plus or a minus for you. Some people love Apple products and some people hate them. So again, something to consider in choosing your device. It is a portable device as well, so you can take it with you if you go on vacation, as long as you have somewhere to set up the camera. But it does also require a good quality Wi-Fi network, so you're going to want to make sure that that's available to you. The cost of this device is $390. Well, there's different levels. If you already have the required iPhone or iPod Touch that will be compatible with this, then it's $399 for the camera. If you need more than that, they have a standard kit for $949 that includes a router, the camera, and a pre-configured latest version of the 32 gig iPod Touch. And when I say pre-configured, it has the SAMI application already loaded and running on it. And then if you need even more, or well, not necessarily more, if you don't like the idea of the iPod Touch and you would rather use an iPad Mini 4, then for $13.99, you can buy what they call their JB kit, which includes the same thing as the standard kit, but instead of the iPod Touch, it uses 128 gig iPad Mini 4. So let's move on now to wearable device. The best known and really the major, maybe the only one right now on the market in the US, is a company called Empatica, and they make a device called the Embrace 2. Their first one was called the Embrace. Their latest version is called the Embrace 2. How it works, it's a wrist-worn device. So it looks similar to a watch, but without a clock face or a display. It's just kind of a panel. What it does is it senses motion and electrodermal activity. So that's the electrical conductance of the skin that's related to the sweat rate. It senses those things. It identifies tonic-clonic seizures, again, mostly through the motion of those rhythmic, repetitive motions. And then it signals directly to the user's phone via Bluetooth. And the user's phone then sends a text or phone call alerts to the family or caregivers that they've chosen. It is the only device that is approved as a medical device for seizure detection by the Food and Drug Administration. And it has been approved for adults and children ages 6 and up. It does require a doctor's prescription, and for that reason, it might be covered by some insurance. Not all, but it's certainly worth looking into if it's something that you're interested in and think that it might work for you. When the Embrace detects a seizure, it keeps a record of it, and then that record, that seizure history, can be viewed and printed and shared. It does monitor rest as well as seizure activity, and it has to be paired with an iPhone or an Android phone. So if you don't like Apple, you do have the option of going with an Android phone. I did not have a chance to look and see what the current phones are. There's a number of different specific models that it's compatible with. And because technology changes all the time, I just suggest that if you want to know if it's compatible with a phone that you already have, go to their website, and they do list which specific phones can be used with the Embrace. It also does require a stable internet connection or a data connection in order to send those alerts. So you have to have, as I said, a phone with a data plan. Also, the phone that it's paired with has to remain within Bluetooth range of the watch. And that is because that's how the watch notifies the phone to send out the texts or the phone calls. The device does use 2 free apps that come with it, and one of them is used for notifying contacts, and the other one tracks the seizures, and it can also track medication, activity, and rest. And this one has a waterproof case for it. So for those of you who worry about spilling something on it, that's a plus. The cost of this device, there are 3 monthly pricing plans. So this gets a little complicated because it depends on what features you're looking for. So again, you really want to spend some time thinking about what you need the watch to do and which features are really important to you and which ones you can live without. Some of the features that might be available depending on the plan, the biggest one is the number of contacts that it can alert. The smallest and cheapest plan will only alert 1 person. There's again 3 packages. The third most expensive package can notify an unlimited number of people. Some other options that might be available depending on the package you buy are GPS location being included in the alerts and recorded events. That can be really helpful if you're trying to monitor someone who either is not living in the same household as you, or if they just are out and about a lot and you want to be notified if they're having a seizure when they're away from home. This would tell you exactly where they are, so that if you want to go to them or send help, you know how to get to them. Another option that might be available depending on the package that you buy is rest mode. And in rest mode, it's supposed to be able to detect milder seizures. There's still going to be the convulsive seizures, the ones that have that repetitive shaking motion, but it should be able in this mode to detect ones that maybe aren't quite as big motions as the others are when you're engaged in very low physical activity, for example, if you're sleeping or just sitting quietly and reading a book. The cost, again, as I said, there are 3 different monthly pricing plans. So I'm sorry, it's not wanting to change the page. There we go. Oh, wait, what happened? There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the cost, basically you buy the device itself. So that's $249. That's a one-time cost. Then after that, you also have to purchase a monthly service plan to keep that app operating and sending those notifications. That ranges from $9.90 a month for the light, what they call their light plan, and that's 1 person being contacted. Under their standard plan is $19.90 a month, and that's for up to 3 contacts. And the plus plan is $44.90 a month, and that gives you unlimited contacts. They are offering a free 30-day trial of the Plus plan right now. I don't know if that happens all the time, but right now I know you can get a free 30-day trial. If you were to buy this and then you decided you did not need all the options of the 30-day plan, it's really important to remember to cancel, because when you sign up for this, they'll take your credit card, and if you don't cancel, like all the other things that people try to get you signed up for trials on, they will keep charging you. So make sure you make a note of when the date when that free trial expires. I did just want to mention, I know I said I wasn't mentioning others that aren't available. There is another wearable out there. It's called the Epilert. It's Epilert. But I did not include that in this webinar because their website does not include any information at all about their costs. And from what I can see, it works somewhat similar to the Embrace. It is not FDA approved. The Embrace is the only one that is. But if you're interested, I would just do a Google search on Epilert Seizure device, and you'll be able to find their website and kind of look at it. And they do have a form that you can fill out to contact them to get more information. So the next one I want to talk about are apps, and basically these are just apps that they're freestanding apps. Unlike the Embrace 2, which is a self-contained seizure monitoring device that runs its own app, these, as I said, are freestanding apps, and they're used with commercially available smartwatches that are sold by companies like Apple and Samsung. The Apple smartwatch, the Samsung, I don't know what they call their watches, but they have smartwatches as well. And then each app that's available is compatible with specific watches. So I want to start with talking about the smartwatch Inspire app. This is really an interesting app because it actually started life as a device, very similar to the Embrace. But for some reason, the company, I don't know whether they didn't think they could compete with the Embrace or what their reasoning was, but they moved in another direction and they abandoned the actual physical device, and now they just sell access to the app, which can be loaded onto an Apple or a Samsung watch. So currently, this app will work with any Android phone running version 5.0.0 and above. And for Apple devices, it will work with an Apple 5S phone or later running the iOS 8 and above software. So again, that's at this point in time, those are the devices that will work with. So I mean, I don't know a lot about Androids. I do know that Apple 5S is a fairly old phone. They're up to an 11 now, so it does seem like it would, even if you have a slightly older iPhone, it does seem like this app should work with it as long as you're running the operating system, and that iOS 8 operating system, I think they're on 13 now for that. So it should be fairly easy to find a phone that will work with this. Again, the app does the exact same thing that the other devices do. It detects the repetitive shaking motion that's characteristic of generalized tonic-clonic seizures, and it's used in combination with a smartwatch, either Apple or Samsung. It signals the user's phone to send text and phone call alerts to family or caregivers. And again, it does this via Bluetooth, I believe this is the one. Yes, this operates through Bluetooth. One thing interesting about this, first of all, it will provide, when it sends that notification, it provides the date, the time, the location, and the duration of the seizure. And one nice feature that this has is a manual cancel. So in case there's a false alarm, as I said, it detects that shaking motion. So maybe you're just cooking and chopping vegetables really vigorously, or you're having an argument and you're shaking your arms around very vigorously, or maybe you're just dancing around your living room and shaking your arms. If it gives you a false alarm, you can hit the manual cancel, and that way people won't get notified for no reason. Kind of a nice feature to have as a backup. It does have to be paired with either an iPhone or an Android phone with a data plan. As I said, the phones, I talked a little bit about which phones they are currently compatible with. Because it uses Bluetooth to send those notifications to, the app uses Bluetooth to tell your phone to send the notifications out. That phone that it's paired with does have to remain within Bluetooth range of the watch. And Bluetooth range is usually somewhere between 15 and 30 feet, depending on the device. There are 3 monthly service plans that offer, again, different features depending on which plan that you're buying. So there is some of the things that are included are cloud-based storage and access to all of the data that's collected on the seizures that happen, downloadable reports that you can share with your physician. GPS location is included again in those alerts and recorded events. It also has a manual button to summon help. So if you are a person who gets auras or gets some sort of warning that a seizure is coming, you actually have the option to hit that button yourself and call for help before the seizure actually begins. It will also track sleep, activity, and heart rate and set reminder alerts. The reminder alerts can be helpful for things like remembering to take your medicine or remembering that you have a doctor appointment today. And the number of contacts alerted, again, range from 1 to unlimited depending on the package. So all of these features that I just talked about are things that may or may not be available depending on the package that you choose to buy. The cost, again, you're not buying a device. So basically they charge a $20 activation fee, no matter which watch you're using or which package you select. Also interesting is that the pricing varies depending on whether you're using an Apple or a Samsung watch. So the monthly fee is cheaper if you're using Samsung, which is no surprise to anyone who's ever bought an Apple device. So it's $9.95 a month for Samsung, $14.95 a month for Apple. And that, again, would only get you 1 contact. The silver package, which would be somewhere in the middle, and I don't know, I didn't look for sure, but I believe that that's probably going to be around up to 3 contacts, maybe a few more. That's $19.95 a month for Samsung, $29.95 a month for Apple. And then the gold package, which will give you unlimited contacts, is $39.95 a month for Samsung and $49.95 a month for Apple. The second app I want to talk about is the newest one on the market. I think it just came out sometime last year. It's called the Overwatch Digital Health app. And again, works pretty much the same way. Senses motion lasting longer than 20 seconds that are indicative of tonic-clonic seizures, that repetitive shaking motion. This app has to be embedded in an Apple Watch Series 3 or later. I believe they're on 5 now, with 7 to be released fairly soon. And that watch has to have GPS and cellular capability. They are working on the ability to work with Android phones, and the last thing I saw said that they're hoping that's going to be available sometime in 2020. I don't know if that's going to change at all given the COVID epidemic, whether that's had any impact on their business plans. But that was the last thing. It still says on their website that they are expecting to have the capability to connect to Android phones this year. When an event is detected with this device, the Apple Watch notifies their Overwatch cloud-based platform. It's a data center in the cloud. And then that platform then sends text messages or automated calls to contacts. It's a little bit different than the way the other apps work because it does not work on Bluetooth. It uses either a data plan, either Wi-Fi or cellular data to send that. And because of that, that means that your phone does not have to be in close proximity to your Apple Watch well, for now, Apple Watch, in order for this to work. You don't have to keep them close to each other. With this Overwatch app, contacts are provided with location information. The seizures are recorded in an online patient portal that you can use to review with your doctor. The Apple Watch does have to be paired with an iPhone, and that iPhone has to be version 6S Plus or newer as of right now. Apple also currently requires that, and if you have an Apple Watch, it has to be paired to its own iPhone line. So that could be a problem if your child doesn't already have their own phone, because they're, if you don't want to buy a phone and a watch for your child, that can be an issue. And sizing could also be an issue for children. So you want to check with Apple on what size wrist one of their Apple Watches will fit. This app does have a manual cancel feature in case of false alarms, just like the other one, and it's supported by 4 of the major cellular carriers: AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon. The cost of this app is a subscription plan, and it's $29.99 a month, no matter what phone you're using or what, again, as of right now, you're only using the Apple Watch. They are currently offering 1 month of free service. Again, make sure that you know when that is up in case you decide you want to cancel it. In addition to the subscription plan, if you don't already have a smartwatch, an Apple Watch that's the right version, then you will have the expense of buying that. And the Series 3 Apple Watch starts at $199. The Series 5 starts at $399. So keep that in mind. But if you do already have this technology, this could be a good app for you to use. Also, your cell phone provider may charge an extra monthly service fee to add the Apple Watch to your account. Just like if you have, you're connecting an iPad to your account and you want a data line for that, they will charge you extra. They will do that for the Apple, very likely do that for the Apple Watch as well. And it's usually around $10 a month. Okay, we've been talking throughout this about some of the things to consider, but I just want to do a little, go in a little more detail on that. Again, you really want to think about what type of seizures do I have? Do I only have tonic-clonic seizures? Then these devices might work. If you don't have tonic-clonic seizures, most of these aren't going to help you. Are they nighttime only seizures? If they are, then a mattress monitor or the SAMI camera might be a good choice. But if you also need to monitor someone during the day, then you might be better off with a wearable or an app. What do you want the device to do? And really spend some time thinking about that. Figure out what's important to you and then choose a device that can perform that function. Do you need it to track when the seizures occur and allow you to share with your doctor? Do you want to know what your seizures look like? The camera device would help you with that. When you're thinking about notifying others, which would be the best way for them to be notified? Through a text, through a phone call, or sounding an alarm? How many people do you need to contact? If it's only one, will that person always be available to receive that notification? Will they have access to their phone during the day at work or at school if they get a notification? And will they be able to come and help you if they do get the notification, or be able to send help? If not, then maybe you want to have more than one person notified. When it comes to how they're notified, also, if you're thinking about this, happening at night, are they heavy sleepers? I know I, for one, would never hear a text come in at night. So an alarm might be better. That's really loud and really jolts me out of bed. But for other people, they're light sleepers and they might hear the phone call or the text. Or is that going to wake up everybody else in the house, including your other kids? Do they live with you? If your child with epilepsy is away at college, or your child is frequently out of the house with friends, then that GPS capability is going to be very important so that you'll know where they are. Do you already, what kind of technology do you need? And do you already own any of it? Do you already have an Apple Watch? Do you already have a smartphone that's compatible? Do you already have an iPad that's compatible with the SAMI camera? Do you have good, strong Wi-Fi? So think about those, because that's going to contribute to the cost if you don't already have those. And what is the cost? Can you afford it? And make sure that you take into account all the costs, not just buying the Embrace watch or the Embrace device, but also those plans that go with it. And really, the last one, maybe the most important, is will the person who needs to use this device be comfortable using it? Even the best system is not going to be helpful if you don't use it. So what would wearing a device like the Embrace 2 make you feel like? Are you going to feel like you're identifying yourself as a person with epilepsy by wearing that? And are you okay with that? Or would you feel more comfortable wearing an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch that's more mainstream and is worn by a lot of other people as well? Um, Again, though, those watches are really big, and maybe that would make you feel too conspicuous. How do you feel about the size of it? For children, is the device even practical? If you have a very young child, will it fit if it's a wearable, will it fit their wrist, and will they keep it on? Is a 2-year-old going to be taking it off all the time? Doesn't do any good if it's not where it needs to be. So again, lots of things to think out. We do have a handout that's in the handout section that gives you some more. It comes from our national office, and it talks about some other things to consider in a seizure alert device. So again, if you want some more things to think about, feel free to take a look at that. And lastly, talk to your doctor. Find out what they think should be important, and they may be able to help you think of some things that you're not considering. Okay, we'll talk now shortly about some seizure assist dogs. Seizure assist dogs are sometimes called seizure response or seizure alert dogs, and they are not pets and they are not emotional support animals. They are service animals, and they're a special type of service dog that is trained to perform specific tasks that can help during a seizure or after a seizure. There is no data right now. And again, when I'm talking data, I'm talking about those scientific studies. There's no data proving that dogs can predict a seizure. These dogs are typically trained to respond to a seizure when it happens, not to predict that one is going to happen. Now, there's anecdotal evidence from people whose dogs seem to develop that tendency. They're trained to respond to seizures, but over time, they may develop a tendency to be able to figure out that a seizure is happening or it's going to happen. And then that behavior can be reinforced by the trainer. But when you go into getting a seizure assist dog, usually it's a good idea not to generally expect that it will be able to predict that seizures are going to happen. That's a nice bonus if it does happen. And it's really not really well understood why it does occur in some animals and why it doesn't in other animals. You may find trainers who say that they will train for it, but the majority of the ones I've talked to do not. They basically feel that it would be almost impossible to train that behavior and might even be unethical, because in order to train a dog to predict seizures, you have to expose them to a lot of seizures. And it's not very ethical to ask an owner to deliberately induce a seizure by not taking their medication or whatever means, so that the dog can be trained to pick up any signals that might indicate it would happen. So again, not something that you should count on. So what can a seizure dog help with? Some of the trained behaviors, the dogs are typically trained to the specific needs of the individual. So some of the behaviors may be that they might be able to go and get help by finding someone else in the house, or by activating a medical alert. I've seen one dog that was trained, their owner had a VNS implant that uses a magnet to activate it. And the dog actually had the magnet in its collar and was able to get up against the person's chest so that the magnet would trigger the VNS device. They can be trained to keep their owner safe. They may be able to pull potentially dangerous objects away from their body if they're in the middle of a seizure. If they're having a seizure where they're able to walk around, but aren't aware of what they're doing, then the dog might be able to help them, keep them from walking into traffic or falling down the stairs. I've also seen and read of dogs who are trained to, if their owner is having a convulsive seizure and they're on the ground, to put their body under their head so that they're not repeatedly hitting their head on the ground during the seizure. They may try to lessen the length of the seizure by helping the person come out of it by licking their face or their hands. And they can also be used just very simply to carry. You can put a little backpack with pouches on it, and they can carry emergency medication and information about their owner's medical condition. So there are a lot of things these dogs can do to help, and a good trainer will work with you to figure out what it is you need them to do. Now, it does take a long time to get a seizure assist dog. And so getting one is not something you decide to do and then next week or next month, or maybe not even next year, you might not have it. It can take a long time, a year, maybe two. And the reason for that is that not every dog is suited to be a training dog, a service dog. And so they have to pick the right dogs. They have to raise the right dogs. They have to socialize them. They have to screen them to make sure that they're healthy enough and that they're trainable. So it's a long, involved process. They are chosen specifically for their health, their temperament, and their aptitude for training. And as I said, not every dog is suited to it. It can be a really stressful job to be a seizure dog, and it can actually be damaging to a dog that doesn't have the right temperament or training. There are multiple organizations, both here locally and nationally, who do train seizure assist dogs. EFMN does have a list of reputable organizations, both local and national, and that list is in the handouts. And that list also includes a couple of national foundations that do help to pay for the cost of service dogs. And again, this is where one of the big drawbacks to seizure dogs is their cost. There are some organizations that provide them free of charge, and that is because they do a lot of fundraising and have very generous donors who help to pay for them. Because these dogs take so long to train, and because there are not a lot of dogs who necessarily qualify, the cost for raising them and training them and getting one is usually between about $17,000 and $20,000. And in some cases, that's not even anywhere near the true cost. Organizations will sometimes do their own fundraising to cover part of the cost, and the owners have to cover the other part of it. So again, one word of warning I really want to give is that anytime someone is in a position of need, there are going to be people out there who are trying to take advantage for their own personal gain. And because these dogs are not cheap and they're not easy to obtain, there are people who are going to prey on people who are desperate. And they sometimes will offer dogs that are poorly trained or even dangerous. I have read of companies that claim to provide trained seizure assist dogs, and the buyers end up with dogs that aren't even house trained or socialized and maybe aggressive. So the list that we have is a good list, but it's not exhaustive. There may be other trainers out there who are perfectly legitimate, but please just be cautious, do your research, ask questions before you hand over that kind of money for a dog. They can be wonderful, but you really want to know that what you're getting is actually a trained service animal. And I know we have very little time left, and I apologize that I went longer than I expected to go, but I do want to take a look to see if we have any questions that have come in, and I will answer as many as I can. Let me see here. Oh, what happened? My questions thing went away. Let me see what I'm doing here. Hold on a minute. I am trying to read. I see I have one, but I'm not. Oh, Mary, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong here, but I'm not able to pull out my question box. Mary, do you have any help for me on this at all? Oh, here we go. Do you know if this can be paid for by a county waiver like Caddy? I'm not sure if you're talking about a device or a seizure dog. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. That's something I'd have to look into. I would imagine that a seizure detection device might be something that would be more likely to be funded by a caddy waiver than a dog would be. That's a very large expense, and I highly doubt that they would pay for it. But I will look into that and see if there are if there is that possibility, and I will get back to you via email. But any other questions here? It looks like that might be the only one. Mary, can you tell me if you see any others that I'm not seeing? Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. Okay, so that was it. So I do appreciate everybody being here today. Thank you for attending. Please reach out if you have any additional questions. Don't hesitate to give us a call at the Epilepsy Foundation. We're here to answer any questions you might have, and I hope that this was useful for you today. And thank you again for attending.